with rising costs and stagnant wages and the middle class shrinking.
Well, the data shows that social mobility has actually declined in recent decades.
Oh, wow.
It's harder for people to climb that economic ladder now than it was for their parents.
So it's not as simple as pulling yourself up by your bootstraps anymore, that whole idea.
It's just not that simple. Things like race, your background, even where you live, they all play a role.
And that's going to be frustrating for a lot of people.
It is. It's led to a lot of disillusionment, especially among younger Americans who are struggling.
And you see that playing out in politics, right?
Absolutely. The
Huh.
rise of populism, both on the left and the right.
People feeling like the system isn't working for them.
Right. That the American dream is facing some harsh realities.
Yeah. The gap between the rich and the poor is getting wider.
And the middle class, which used to be so strong, is feeling squeezed.
It's a lot to process. Okay, let's switch gears for a minute and talk about education. That's supposed to be the great equalizer, right?
It is, in theory, but the reality is more complicated.
Yeah. I mean, we hear about these amazing universities like Harvard and Stanford, but what about the rest of the system?
Well, the U.S. spends a lot on education, more than most countries,
Okay.
but the outcomes are pretty uneven. Quality really depends on where you live, what resources are available.
So not every American kid has access to a good education.
Sadly, no. And that has long-term consequences, not just for individuals, but for society as a whole.
Right, right. It contributes to that cycle of poverty and inequality we were talking about.
Exactly. Limits social mobility, hinders economic growth.
So a child's zip code affects their healthcare and their education.
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow. And what about college?
Public universities and community colleges are vital. They make higher education accessible to millions.
Okay.
But even they're facing challenges. Rising tuition costs, shrinking state funding.
And then there's the whole student loan debt crisis.
Yeah, that's a huge burden for a lot of young people.
It makes you wonder if college is even worth it anymore.
Well, the economic landscape is changing. The old markers of success aren't so clear-cut anymore.
It's like that whole path, college, good job, house, family. Is it even realistic these days?
It's definitely tougher, but, amidst all these challenges, there's also a lot of innovation.
Oh, yeah?
Young people are finding new ways to build fulfilling lives. They're challenging the status quo.
So there's hope then.
Absolutely. That American spirit of resilience is alive and well.
I love that. Okay, let's lighten things up a bit. What about American culture? It's everywhere, right?
It is. Hollywood movies, American music, fast food.
McDonald's, Starbucks. They're global.
They are. For better or worse, they've become symbols of globalization.
And then there are brands like Coca-Cola, Levi's, Nike.
It's like they embody this idea of freedom, individuality, the pursuit of happiness.
Right, but American culture is so much more than that, right?